The morning had started ordinarily enough for Captain Mark Daniels as he reviewed the daily intelligence briefings in his office at the Joint Operations Center. The serene calm of the early hours was shattered when alarms blared throughout the facility. Instantly, he was on his feet, military instincts taking over as he headed straight to the command center. "Report!" he barked as he entered the room, where screens displayed a live feed from the orbital defense satellites. His second-in-command, Colonel Rick Stevens, pointed to the images on the main screen. "Sir, we've detected multiple unidentified objects entering Earth's orbit. Their numbers are increasing. We estimate over 100 vessels now." Mark squinted at the screens. The shapes were sleek and unmistakably alien. "Have they made any aggressive moves?" "Not yet, sir. They're holding position. But their arrival was completely stealthy, no prior detection," Rick replied, adjusting the feed to zoom in on the largest ship. The door slammed open and General Alan Carter, the head of Earth's defense forces, stormed in. His gaze was fixed on the screen as he approached. "What's our status, Daniels?" "Full alert, sir. All units are ready to engage, but we're holding fire until we understand their intentions," Mark answered, keeping his tone even despite the growing tension in the room. Alan nodded, his eyes never leaving the alien fleet. "Let's keep it that way. We need more intel. Have we tried communicating with them?" Lieutenant Michael Webb, who was responsible for communications, chimed in from his station. "We've sent multiple hails in all known frequencies and languages, sir. No response so far." Mark turned to Michael. "Keep trying, and let's add any mathematical and binary sequences to our signals, anything that might get a response." As the team worked, the silence was heavy, filled only by the beeping of consoles and the soft murmur of orders being given. Then, the unexpected happened. The largest alien ship began to move slowly towards Earth, its intentions still unclear. Rick exhaled sharply. "That doesn't look good. Sir, should we start evacuating civilians?" Mark nodded. "Begin precautionary evacuations. Target major cities first. Better to be safe." He paused, watching the slow advance of the alien behemoth. "Rick, coordinate with all global defense units. We need a unified response ready to go at my command." "Yes, sir," Rick responded, turning to relay the orders. General Carter stepped beside Mark, lowering his voice. "Mark, whatever happens, we need to maintain control. The world is watching us now, and we can't afford panic or mistakes." Mark understood the weight of his responsibility. He was not just defending a military post. He was standing between humanity and a potential threat of unimaginable proportions. He turned to address his team, his voice calm and commanding. "Everyone, I know this is what we train for, but it's more than just execution of duty now. We are the first line of defense. Let's show them what Earth can do." As preparations intensified, another officer reported a new development. "Sir, the alien ship has stopped its advance. It's just holding position again." Mark considered this. It could be a sign they're willing to communicate, or it's a prelude to something else. Stay sharp, everyone. Just then, Michael called out, "Sir, we're receiving a transmission." All eyes turned to his station as he worked to decode the incoming message. The room fell silent, every officer holding their breath as the static-filled audio began to clear. The voice that finally emerged was mechanical, tinged with static but unmistakably deliberate. "Human leaders, we are the Zorathians. We have come to claim Earth. Surrender is your only option." The message repeated, sending a chill down Mark's spine. He turned to General Carter. "Looks like our guests aren't here for diplomacy." General Carter's face hardened. "Then let's not keep them waiting. Prepare for engagement." Mark nodded and took a deep breath. This was it. The moment his entire career had led up to. As he issued the orders to prepare for what might be Earth's first interstellar conflict, he knew there was no turning back. The battle for Earth was about to begin. Captain Mark Daniels stood in the dimly lit war room, surrounded by his top advisors and military experts. The screens lining the walls flickered incessantly with updates and satellite imagery, showing the growing alien presence encircling Earth. "Let's get an update on the alien movements," Mark demanded, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. Colonel Rick Stevens stepped forward, pointing to the large tactical display. "The main cluster of Zorathian ships has begun a descent into our atmosphere. They're targeting major urban centers, New York, London, Tokyo. The pattern is clear. They're going after densely populated areas," Rick reported grimly. Mark's jaw tightened. "What's our aerial response capability at these locations?" Lieutenant Colonel David Nguyen, head of the Aerial Defense Squad, responded from his console. "We have squadrons on standby ready to intercept. The new S-22 fighters are equipped and pilots briefed. We can have them in the air within minutes. Do it, and get the anti-air batteries operational. I want no ship getting through without a fight, Mark ordered. As David relayed the commands, General Alan Carter stepped beside Mark, his expression serious. We need to consider the possibility of ground forces, Mark. If they land, this could get much worse. Mark nodded. Agree. Let's mobilize the ground units. Infantry, tanks, all ready to move on my command. We'll give them a welcome they won't forget. Outside, the skies began to darken as dozens of Zorathian ships breached the atmosphere, their silhouettes casting vast shadows over the cities below. Panic spread on the streets as civilians scrambled for shelter. Within the hour, the first wave of Earth's fighters roared into the skies, meeting the alien invaders with a barrage of firepower. Explosions dotted the clouds as dogfights erupted across the horizon. In the command center, Michael Webb kept a steady stream of communications flowing. Echo Team engaged over Paris. Alpha Team taking heavy fire over New York. Bravo Team has downed 3 enemy crafts over Tokyo. The reports were a mixed bag. Some squadrons successful, others overwhelmed. Mark gritted his teeth as he processed each update, aware of the stakes. Suddenly, a new alert came in. Sir, we have visual on possible landing crafts detaching from the main Zorathian ships. They're headed for major city outskirts, an analyst called out. Rick turned to Mark. Ground forces? Deploy them, all units, and set up defensive perimeters around those landing zones. We can't let them establish a foothold, Mark replied without hesitation. As Earth's military mobilized, the reality of the invasion settled in. This was no mere skirmish. It was a full-scale assault on their planet. The ground shook as alien crafts began touching down, releasing hordes of Zorathian soldiers. They were large, intimidating creatures clad in metallic armor, wielding weapons that hummed with unknown energy. Mark watched the live feeds, his heart racing as he saw his troops engaging the enemy. The sounds of gunfire and shouts filled the command center's audio, a stark reminder of the battle raging on. Hold the lines! He found himself shouting at the screen, as if his voice could reach the men and women fighting bravely below. The Zorathians were relentless, but so were Earth's forces. In Tokyo, tanks fired round after round into a group of invaders, halting their advance. In London, a battalion of soldiers led a daring charge, pushing the enemy back. As the first day of fighting drew to a close, the world lay in a precarious balance. Earth had managed to hold its ground, but at great cost. Cities were in chaos, and casualty reports began to mount. Back in the war room, Mark convened with his commanders, fatigue etched on every face. We've held them, for now, but this is just the beginning. We need to reassess our strategy, reinforce our defenses, and keep the pressure on. Humanity depends on it. Determined faces nodded back at him, their resolve hardened by the day's events. They were down, but not out. The fight for Earth was just beginning, and they were ready to defend their home, no matter the cost. The war room was abuzz with activity as Captain Mark Daniels reviewed the aftermath of the first day's battles with his commanders. Maps and live feeds covered the walls, showing troop deployments and alien movements. The initial shock of the invasion was giving way to a grim determination. Let's focus on their weaknesses, Mark started, pointing at the satellite images of the previous skirmishes. Reports indicate their shields go down momentarily after they fire their weapons. We need to exploit that. Ideas? Colonel Rick Stevens stepped forward, tapping on a digital map that highlighted recent conflict zones. We've observed that delay in several encounters. I suggest we adjust our missile systems to time their strikes right after the Zorathians shoot. It's risky, but it could give us the opening we need. Lieutenant Colonel David Nguyen chimed in. Our pilots can run synchronized strike patterns. Hit and run. Keep them off balance and not let them regroup. Mark nodded appreciatively. Implement it. Train the squadrons tonight. I want them ready by dawn. General Alan Carter, who had been silent, finally spoke. We also need to consider the human element. Our troops are scared but motivated. Let's use that. Psychological operations could help undermine the alien morale while boosting our own. Agreed, Mark said. Let's start broadcasting intercepted communications. Show the troops the confusion and setbacks we're causing, and spread rumors through their ranks if we can. Anything to shake their confidence. As the team set to work, Major Sarah Lynn, the cyber warfare specialist, approached Mark with an urgent update. Captain, we've made a breakthrough. We've managed to hack into one of the downed alien craft's navigation systems. We think we can disrupt their coordination. Mark's eyes lit up with cautious optimism. That's excellent, Sarah. Start working on a virus. If we can feed it into their systems, we might disrupt their entire fleet's movements. Already on it, Captain, Sarah replied, her fingers flying over her tablet as she coordinated with her team. Meanwhile, in the skies and streets of Earth cities, the adjusted tactics began to show promise. The synchronized strikes caught several Zorathian ships off guard, resulting in significant damage. The soldiers on the ground cheered each time an alien ship faltered, their morale boosted by the visible effects of their efforts. Back on the ground, Lieutenant Jake Ramirez, a seasoned combat pilot, led a daring sortie under the new strategy. His squadron darted through the alien formations, exploiting the brief shield downtimes to inflict maximum damage. After a particularly successful mission, Jake reported back to Mark. "Sir, the new tactics are working. They can't keep up with our speed and precision, but we need to keep the pressure up. They're adapting quickly." Mark clapped Jake on the shoulder. "Good work, Lieutenant. Get some rest. We'll need you sharp for tomorrow." That night, as the team prepared for the next phase, Mark walked through the camp where soldiers were resting, repairing equipment, and sharing stories from the day's battles. He stopped to speak with them, listening to their concerns and bolstering their spirits. "You all are the bravest people I've ever known," he told a group of young soldiers. "We're making history here. Keep fighting and keep believing." As he returned to the command center, a sense of cautious optimism filled the air. The combination of advanced tactics, psychological warfare, and technological breakthroughs was beginning to turn the tide. But Mark knew the war was far from over. The Zorathians were down, but not defeated, and the fate of Earth still hung in the balance. The next morning, as the sun rose over a battered but unbroken Earth, Mark watched his troops prepare for another day of fighting. With every passing moment, they were rewriting the future, determined to defend their planet at all costs. The battle was raging, but hope was on their side. The relentless barrage of conflict between Earth's forces and the Zorathian invaders had taken its toll on both sides. The initial alien advantage of surprise and superior technology was beginning to wane under the continuous pressure of human ingenuity and persistence. Captain Mark Daniels reviewed the latest reports, noting the gradual shift in momentum. It was early morning in the command center, and the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. "Sir, the Zorathians are changing tactics," reported Colonel Rick Stevens, pointing to the satellite images displayed on the large screens. "It looks like they're regrouping for something big. They've pulled back from several of our key defensive positions." Mark leaned forward, analyzing the movements. "They're trying to stretch our resources thin, hit us where we're not expecting. We need to stay one step ahead. Let's fortify our positions and prepare for a countermaneuver." Lieutenant Colonel David Nguyen added, "I've been coordinating with air surveillance. We've noticed increased activity in the northern sectors. They might be planning to target our supply lines." General Alan Carter, who had been quietly observing the strategies, spoke up. "Let's not just play defense. It's time we take the fight to them. Mark, what do you think about a direct assault on their forward base? It's risky, but it could disrupt their command structure." Mark considered this for a moment before nodding decisively. "It's a bold move, but bold is what we need right now. David, get your pilots ready. Rick, coordinate with ground forces for a synchronized strike. We hit them hard and fast before they can execute their next move." As the preparations for the assault were set into motion, Mark turned his attention to Major Sarah Lynn. "Sarah, any progress on that disruption virus?" "Yes, Captain. We've completed the coding. If we can get it into their mainframe, it should throw their systems into chaos, at least temporarily," she replied, her expression serious but confident. "Perfect," Mark said. "Include that in the strike plan. It's time to test our little surprise." The day's light faded as Earth's forces launched their counterattack. Jets streaked across the sky while ground troops moved stealthily towards the alien base. The element of surprise was on their side, and the initial stages of the assault went better than expected. In the skies, Lieutenant Jake Ramirez led his squadron with precision, providing air cover and targeting key alien defenses. On the ground, teams infiltrated the alien perimeter, planting charges and spreading confusion. "Explosives are set, and we're clear," came the confirmation from the ground team. Mark watched the operation unfold from the command center, his heart racing with each update. "Now, Sarah," he ordered. With a few keystrokes, Sarah transmitted the virus into the alien network. Moments later, screens showed signs of malfunction within the alien command. Alarms blared from the enemy base, and their defensive responses lagged. "Their systems are down. The virus is working," Sarah exclaimed, relief and triumph evident in her voice. Mark gave the order. Detonate the charges. Explosions lit up the night as the alien base suffered significant damage. Cheers erupted in the command center, but Mark remained focused. Keep pushing. Don't give them a chance to recover. The battle raged through the night. As dawn approached, it was clear that the human forces had dealt a significant blow to the alien operation. The Zorathians were now on the defensive, their movements disorganized and reactive. Rick turned to Mark with a weary smile. That was a game-changer, sir. We've got them reeling. Mark nodded, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. It's a good victory, but this war is far from over. They'll retaliate, and we need to be ready. Let's use this time to strengthen our defenses and heal our wounded. As the sun rose over a battlefield that bore the scars of a fierce night, Mark knew that the turning point in this war might just have been reached. Earth was not just surviving, it was fighting back with a vengeance. After the successful night raid that had shaken the core of the Zorathian command structure, Captain Mark Daniels knew that maintaining the technological edge was crucial. The command center was alive with activity as engineers and tech teams worked feverishly to capitalize on the momentum. Sir, we've recovered components from the downed Zorathian crafts. Our engineers are already reverse engineering their technology, reported Major Sarah Lynn, her eyes bright with the thrill of innovation. Excellent, Sarah. Keep me updated on any breakthroughs. We need every advantage we can get, Mark responded, scanning the latest data feeds from the front lines. General Alan Carter joined him, reviewing the reports. Mark, the Zorathians will be scrambling to recover from that blow. Now's the time to push harder. Mark nodded in agreement. I'm thinking along the same lines, Alan. We need to disrupt their operations further. Any progress on enhancing our drones with the alien tech? Sarah chimed in. Yes, Captain. We've integrated some of their shield technology into our drones. They're now capable of breaching the Zorathian defenses more effectively. We're preparing for a field test soon. Make it happen. The sooner, the better, Mark directed, his mind already on the next phase of their strategy. As the new drones were deployed, the skies over the battleground saw a new type of warfare unfold. The enhanced drones swooped through alien defenses, delivering critical blows to their infrastructure. Mark watched the live feeds, a grim satisfaction settling over him as each Zorathian emplacement faltered under the assault. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Jake Ramirez was piloting his aircraft, leading a squadron equipped with the newly adapted weapons systems. Control, this is Ramirez. We're seeing a significant improvement in penetration. The new tech is holding up. Confirmed, Ramirez. Keep pressing forward, came the response from Mission Control. The battle intensified as Earth's forces leveraged their newfound technological superiority. The Zorathians, caught off guard by the rapid adaptation and implementation of their own technology against them, struggled to maintain their positions. Back at the command center, a new development was unfolding. Sarah approached Mark with an urgent update. Captain, we've made another breakthrough with the alien communication tech. We think we can intercept and decode their transmissions in real time. That could give us their battle plans. Do it, Sarah. Every piece of information could be the difference between a victory and a setback, Mark stated, aware of the stakes. The implementation of the communication interception brought a wealth of strategic data. Mark and his team could now listen in on the Zorathians' tactical discussions, adapting their own strategies in real time to counter enemy moves. This is a game-changer, General Carter remarked, listening to the intercepted transmissions. We know their next move before they make it. Armed with superior technology and intelligence, Earth's forces initiated a series of coordinated attacks across various fronts, each move anticipated and countered by the agile Earth Command. As the day wore on, the tide of battle shifted noticeably. The Zorathians, unable to keep up with the rapid technological and strategic adaptations of Earth's forces, found themselves being pushed back on multiple fronts. In the dwindling light, Mark stood in the command center, watching the reports come in. Each report spoke of gains, of territory reclaimed, and of enemy units in retreat. We're turning the tide, he murmured, allowing himself a moment of pride. Let's keep the pressure on. This isn't just about surviving anymore. It's about winning. Determined to press their advantage, Earth's forces prepared for the next phase of the conflict, knowing that the balance had shifted in their favor. The Zorathians had underestimated Earth's ability to adapt and overcome, a mistake that Mark was determined not to let them forget. The sun rose over a battered Earth, casting long shadows across the command center where Captain Mark Daniels and his team were strategizing their next move. The war with the Zorathians was reaching a critical point, and every decision could tip the balance. However, an unexpected internal crisis was about to unfold. "Sir, there's an issue you need to see immediately," Colonel Rick Stevens said, his voice tense as he approached Mark with a tablet in hand. The screen showed logs of encrypted communications intercepted within their own network, communications that should not have existed. Mark's brow furrowed as he scanned the data. "What am I looking at, Rick?" "It appears someone in our ranks has been sending encrypted messages to an unknown recipient. We traced the signals back to a device in our base," Rick explained, his expression grave. "A mole in our midst," Mark muttered, his mind racing. "Do we have any leads on who it might be?" "We're narrowing it down, but we need to handle this delicately. Accusations could tear us apart," Rick cautioned. Mark nodded, fully aware of the stakes. "Keep this quiet. Track the next communication. We catch them in the act." As Rick organized a discreet surveillance operation, the war continued to rage outside. Mark couldn't afford the luxury of focusing solely on the traitor. The global effort to push back the Zorathians needed his strategic mind. However, it wasn't long before the traitor made another move. Late at night, as the base lay quiet under a tense peace, the surveillance team alerted Mark to another outgoing message. They tracked the signal to a remote part of the base where they caught Lieutenant James Keller, a young communications officer, red-handed. Mark confronted James personally in the security office, where the young lieutenant sat handcuffed, his face a mix of defiance and fear. "James, why?" Mark asked, the betrayal stinging him more than he expected. James looked up, his eyes hardened. "Sir, I believe we can't win this war. I was trying to negotiate a ceasefire, to save lives. By going behind our backs? By betraying your planet?" Mark's voice rose, barely containing his anger. "I thought I was doing the right thing," James replied, his voice faltering. Mark shook his head, deeply disappointed. "You jeopardized everything we fought for. You put all our lives at risk." With the traitor caught, Mark had to quickly restore trust within his ranks. He addressed his commanders, explaining the situation without revealing James's identity to prevent any unrest. "We've faced a serious breach of trust today," Mark began, his team listening intently in the command center. "It's been dealt with. Let this be a reminder that unity is our greatest strength. We must remain vigilant, both against external enemies and internal threats." As they absorbed the news, General Alan Carter stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on Mark's shoulder. "We stand with you, Captain. We trust your leadership." Reaffirmed by his team's support, Mark refocused on the war effort. The betrayal had been a painful distraction, but it also reinforced the resolve of Earth's defenders. They were fighting not just for survival, but for a future where such betrayals would no longer be necessary. With renewed determination, Mark returned to the task at hand. The Zorathians were still out there, and Earth's forces needed their leader more than ever. As they prepared for the next day's operations, the team was more united than before, each member ready to defend their home to the last. As dawn broke over a world braced for conflict, Captain Mark Daniels stood in the command center, surrounded by his top officers. The screens displayed troop movements and satellite imagery, painting a picture of a planet under siege, but defiant. Today was the day Earth's forces would launch their most ambitious operation yet, aimed at decisively turning the tide against the Zorathian invaders. "Today we strike at the heart of their fleet," Mark announced to the room, his voice firm and commanding. "We've pushed them back, we've disrupted their command, and we've exposed their weaknesses. Now we end this." Colonel Rick Stevens nodded, pulling up the operational map. "Our forces are in position around the globe, ready for the synchronized strike. Air and sea units are coordinated to begin the assault within the hour." Lieutenant Colonel David Nguyen chimed in, detailing the air support strategy. "Our fighters are equipped with the latest anti-shield missiles from the tech we adapted. They'll punch through the Zorathian defenses and clear the way for our ground forces." Mark looked around at his team, each member ready to play their part in what would be the largest battle in human history. "This is it. All units, commence Operation Liberty Dawn." As the operation kicked off, the first reports started coming in. Earth's forces, emboldened by their recent successes, met the Zorathian fleet with a ferocity that echoed across continents. In the Pacific, naval forces engaged Zorathian warships, while in Europe, fighter jets filled the skies, darting through enemy lines with lethal precision. On the main display, live feeds showed scenes of intense combat. Explosions lit up the sky as human and alien technologies clashed in a dazzling display of firepower and strategy. Mark watched closely, every report, every victory, and every setback monitored and responded to with swift decisions. In the midst of the battle, a critical development unfolded. Major Sarah Lynn approached Mark, her expression tense but determined. "Captain, we've managed to penetrate their flagship's defense network. We can disable it, but we need a direct line. Someone has to get inside." Mark understood the gravity of the mission. "Do it. I'll lead the team myself. Prepare a shuttle. We leave in 10 minutes. The room went silent, the weight of his decision palpable. General Alan Carter stepped forward, concern etched on his features. "Mark, you don't have to do this yourself. Let one of us—" "I appreciate that, Alan, but I need to see this through. Command is yours. If I don't make it back—" "You will," Alan interrupted, clapping Mark on the shoulder with a firm resolve. "We'll keep the line open. Get in, plant the virus, and get out. We'll cover you." With the plan set, Mark donned his tactical gear and headed to the shuttle bay, where a small team of elite soldiers awaited, ready for the mission that could end the war. The shuttle ride was tense, the silence only broken by the distant thumps of ongoing battles. As they approached the Zorathian flagship, hidden from sensors by the latest cloaking technology, Mark felt the weight of his years of service, all leading to this moment. They infiltrated the flagship with precision, encountering minimal resistance as most of the Zorathian forces were engaged in the battle outside. Reaching the core, Mark and Sarah worked quickly to install the virus. "Almost there," Sarah muttered, her fingers flying over the alien console. "Done. Virus is active." Suddenly, alarms blared, and Zorathian soldiers rushed toward them. "Time to go!" Mark shouted, firing his weapon as they made a break for the shuttle. They narrowly escaped, the shuttle dodging debris and enemy fire as they raced back to Earth. Behind them, the flagship's lights flickered and died, the virus spreading through its systems, crippling the Zorathian fleet. As they landed, cheers erupted from the command center. The Zorathian resistance faltered, their command paralyzed, giving Earth's forces the upper hand. Mark stepped out of the shuttle, weary but victorious, greeted by his fellow soldiers. "We did it," he said simply, the relief and joy evident in his tired smile. The battle for Earth raged on, but with the heart of the Zorathian fleet broken, victory was within reach. Earth had not just defended itself, it had shown the galaxy the strength and courage of humanity. The final hours of the conflict unfolded with Earth's forces driving the beleaguered Zorathian invaders back, reclaiming the skies and lands that had nearly been lost. Captain Mark Daniels, still clad in his battle-worn uniform, stood in the war room surrounded by his officers as reports of the retreating alien fleet poured in. "We have confirmed visual on their withdrawal, sir. The Zorathians are leaving Earth's orbit," Colonel Rick Stevens announced, the relief in his voice mirroring the smiles that spread around the room. Mark nodded, allowing himself a moment to absorb the news. "Broadcast the confirmation to all units. Tell them, job well done." Cheers erupted from the command staff, the tension of months of relentless struggle dissipating into the air of victory. As the celebrations continued around him, Mark walked over to the large windows looking out over the city below, now safe from the alien threat. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the damaged yet enduring landscape, a symbol of Earth's resilience. General Alan Carter joined him, his voice reflective. "You led us through hell, Mark. You didn't just fight, you inspired. Humanity owes you." Mark shook his head modestly. "I didn't do this alone, Alan. It was every soldier, every pilot, every engineer. Our united front made this possible. We owe this victory to each other." The next day, global celebrations marked the end of the alien threat. Streets filled with people, military parades showcased Earth's defenders, and leaders gave speeches that echoed the sentiment of a planet reborn from the ashes of war. In the midst of it all, Mark attended a memorial service for the fallen. The names of those who had given their lives for Earth's defense were read aloud, each one a somber note in the symphony of victory. Flowers were laid, and salutes were given as Mark addressed the crowd. "We stand here today in the shadow of heroes, those who believed so deeply in our cause that they made the ultimate sacrifice. Let us honor them not just with words, but with our actions. Let us continue to strive for peace, for a future where such sacrifices are no longer necessary." As the crowd dispersed, Mark was approached by young soldiers and veterans alike, each expressing their gratitude and sharing their stories. Their faces, marked by the trials of war yet bright with hope, reinforced Mark's belief in the enduring spirit of humanity. The war had changed the world, and it had changed him. Looking forward, Mark knew his role would shift from warrior to peacemaker. The task of rebuilding awaited, not just the cities and structures, but the very fabric of global society, now more interconnected than ever. In the weeks that followed, as Earth's governments worked to strengthen their planetary defenses, Mark worked with leaders to ensure that the unity forged in the fires of conflict would endure. New alliances were formed, and a global council was established to address not only defense, but also the welfare of all Earth citizens. Sitting in his office one evening, Mark looked over the city as it continued to heal and rebuild. He knew that the peace might be fragile, but it was real. He had seen the best and worst of humanity, and he chose to believe in its potential. The war was over, and Earth was safe, but the journey of building a better future was just beginning. Mark was ready to lead, not with weapons, but with wisdom and the hope for lasting peace.